So I'm going to tell you about that time when I showed my mother a sexist scene that I had directed. Maybe it will help you to stop self-censoring yourselves or something. But first things first. I've been writing and directing short film comedies for more than 10 years, and I've been thinking about the creative process for most of my adult life, sometimes when I should actually be working. Why do we write screenplays, or compose music, or shoot short films? What moves us? What drives us? Now, I do believe that everybody's creative on a certain level. Of course, that has been explained many times, especially in TED Talks by people far more talented than I. Everybody's creative, yes, but what jumpstarts creativity? Why do you decide to create something new instead of playing Super Mario Bros. 3 again? It's a fascinating subject, but in my research I found that sometimes when talking about creativity, the language is far too abstract, and I can't relate to many of the notions. Here, I'll give you some examples. The waves of creativity reach your brain when the tide of your heart rises. Now, I don't know what that means. Shoes made from motivation will take you further than wings made from hate. No, I have no idea what that means either. Impetus may start with an I, but it finishes, sorry, no idea, no. No. I'm sure if you have ever read a book about creativity, or if you have ever gone to a seminar on creativity, I'm sure you've heard statements similar to those. I mean, the language is beautiful, yes. Inspiring, okay. It's great for a Facebook status. But not so helpful on a day-to-day basis, because the people who write these kind of statements are being creative about creativity. In fact, I think that all these romantic notions might be at best confusing and at worst a tiny bit dangerous, because they help to propagate a myth. The myth of the artist who's touched by the god of arts, who grants him inspiration. And frankly, that doesn't really help me explain how I do what I do. So I want to propose another approach, something that I call realistic creativity. Now, that might sound terribly pretentious, but it actually aims to bring these concepts down to earth, where they belong, to make them more human, more accessible. The muses, for example. I do believe that we are triggered by muses, but I don't believe that muses are fat little angels that whisper wonderful stories in our ear. And I don't believe that we are touched by the finger of God either. I'm more realistic than that. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that no God has ever touched me. In fact, I believe that our muses have a name, have a surname, and more often than not, our muses don't give a fuck about us. Our muses can take the form of our father, who disapproves about the career that we have chosen, of our literature teacher, Don Agustin, who one time when we were 12 mentioned casually how much we sucked. Or the girl next door, who we are completely in love with, but she doesn't even know that we exist. And what all these people have in common is that we need the recognition. We need the validation of this authority figure. We need to please them, to impress them, to prove our love to them, or to prove them wrong. And to do that, we use the tools that we have at our disposal. We use words, pictures, drawings, music, photographs, because that's the only way we know how to do it. That's the best way we know how to say, here I am, please love me. Even Kafka, Franz Kafka, wondered, would it be possible for a girl to fall in love with you through writing? So there is the classic romantic muse that inspires us. Spanish poet Garcilaso de la Vega dedicated most of his poems to Isabel Freire, the love of his life. Beatriz Portinari was the muse of Italian poet Dante Alighieri. But not everybody is a Mediterranean poet. And love is not the only motivation. Sometimes there is the need to impress somebody, and by somebody, I mean your father. Comedian Steve Martin wrote in his autobiography, Born Standing Up, about how badly he needed his father's recognition. When Steve Martin appeared in the Saturday Night Live for the first time in the 70s, the highest honor for a comedian, his father wrote a terrible review for his son's performance in the newsletter of the Association of Realtors, for which he was president. He was never impressed, never had a good word for his sons, who tried desperately to please him. Now, more colorful, perhaps, was Salvador Dali's relationship with his dad. I apologize in advance for this very graphic story, but Dali claims to have sent his father a used condom with his own sperm and a note saying, "I owe you nothing anymore." Again, I'm sorry to have planted such a vivid image in your heads, and to help me erase it, let's see a random picture of me being punched by a fat Spider-Man. Now, yeah, that's better now, that's better, that helps. It can be your father or it can be your mother. Elvis Presley worshipped his mother Gladys, and the first song that he ever recorded, My Happiness, was done as a birthday gift to her. The first song in a not too bad musical career. Now, recognition, validation, even revenge, these are all emotions. And the word emotion comes from the Latin emotio, which means movement or impulse. Because emotions are in fact a fuel for your activity, for your creativity, a fuel to reach your goal, to impress your muse. But what happens when your muse is not impressed? Is that a bad thing? And now I'll get to telling you about that time when I saw my mother a sex scene that I directed. You see, I was supposed to follow the family business footsteps. My grandfather started a business of industrial clothing that my parents continued. And I was supposed to be the next in line. But no. No. I wanted to be a film director. Whee! A horror film director, because I loved horror. So I had everything set up for me, and I changed all those plans with a crazy dream. And my mother supported that dream. She believed in me, and she let me study filmmaking, first in a different city, then in a different country, away from her only child. She knew that it was going to be hard, and she was right, but she trusted me with all her heart. Isn't that a gift? How could I possibly repay her? So my mother's favorite films are comedies. There is enough drama in the world as it is, she says. She loves to laugh, and her laughter is huge. It fills any room. It's contagious. So I thought, okay, after everything that she had done for me, the very least that I could do is to pay her back with laughter. And that's what I did. She never asked me to, but I only did comedies. Warm, sweet, hopefully funny comedies. So in 2007, I directed a short film called A Practical Guide for Imaginary Friends. And in this short film, we see our young hero who's still in love with his childhood crush. And at the end...
Bueno, ¿qué?
¿Pero qué pasó?
¿Qué pasó? Pues pasó que al final fulminé a la humana con mi visión láser, claro.
At the end, they end up happily together and in love. That's probably the most saccharine thing that I've ever directed. And needless to say, my mother loved it. So tender, so nice, good boy. Like the rest of what I've been doing for more than 10 years, because more and more I believe that was the only way to make her feel proud. Now, after this short film, I went through a not very optimistic period. I went through a rough patch. And I directed my next short film called Bono, my latest one. And it was a rough story in this this time there was no happiness, no joy, as it was a story about broken dreams and shattered hopes that ends with a married man having an affair in a public room, and well, it ends like this.
Hola, soy Merche. En este momento no te puedo atender, así que tú deja tu mensaje y te llamo después. Un besote.
Un autógrafo de Bono.
So I was feeling quite anxious because that was the first sex scene that I've ever directed, and it was time to show my mother the short film, and I was quite nervous about it. So I decided to take something from that situation and immortalize the moment. So I took a picture of my mother watching that sex scene. She's going to get so mad, so mad. So, you know, I read about Todd Solondz, who's a personal hero of mine. This is another film director, and how when he premiered his film Happiness at a film festival, he couldn't attend the rest of the festival because he was there with his parents, and he even missed the award ceremony because he was still arguing with his parents because of the film. So I expected something similar or worse. And I was really, really anxious. Will she like it? Won't she? Will she? Won't she? And no, she didn't like it at all. She asked me to go back to comedies. All my family hated it, in fact. All my family hated that short film. On Christmas Day, they told me, your last short film is bad, and you know it. But that's it. That was basically it. The next day, we all went to El Corte Inglés, and I bought some pajamas because I needed some pajamas. And I realized, okay, I've been writing with my mother in the back of my mind during all these years. My muse was supervising rather than inspiring my work. It was my boss. Will she like this story, or this ending, or this new character? What could possibly happen if she doesn't like this? And that moment came, arrived, and life went on. And I thought, all these years, I've been self-censoring myself from so many stories because I imagined something much more dramatic than any screenplay that I could have possibly written. So, if my mother says this, what I would tell her is that it's not a coincidence that I gave you so much power because you gave me so much love. But I need to keep exploring without any pressure. I need to write that story and direct it, that story about the first pregnant man. And we are going to see the first delivery of a baby from a man. And there is going to be blood and guts. And you are going to hate it. But that's okay, because you can't please your muse all the time, every time. And sometimes your muse doesn't care about you, what you've done. Your literature teacher, the one who said how much you sucked, well, he doesn't remember about you, no matter how many successes you think you have. You're not going to have sex with the beautiful girl next door, not with your poetry, at least. And your mother, well, if your mother is similar to mine, you should take a bazooka and destroy a children's hospital for your mother to be slightly disappointed in you. So what I've learned during all these years is to identify your muse, yes, treat her with kindness and respect, of course, but never forget. Coming up after the break, another 30-something-year-old guy, but this time with daddy issues.